Perhaps you've noticed along the beaches and other touristy areas an abundance of crosswalks for pedestrians. However, in Manatee County, Florida, where the locals live, areas that have high pedestrian volume, like this road right here, sadly, pedestrian fatalities are a common thing here in Bradenton, Florida, because the county doesn't care about preventing these accidents. Many people in this county even claim that local government officials own the local funeral home, and that's why they don't care to make busy areas like this have pedestrian crosswalks. In the time I've lived in Bradenton, I have heard countless stories about people who've lost loved family members due to the dangerous situation of pedestrian crossings in this county. Not only are motorists many times under the influence, but so are pedestrians, making the roads of Manatee County quite dangerous. Recently, along Cortez, new pedestrian crosses have been installed, a long overdue situation. On the left of us is the Home Depot entrance. A few months back, we had somebody reach out to me who lost a family member right here, and this person wanted me to raise some awareness on our YouTube channel about the dangerous pedestrian crossings in Manatee County. Now, as you can see here, this pedestrian apparently didn't press the button and apparently doesn't really know how to use this crosswalk, so there is a little bit of confusion. Also, hesitation from vehicles that simply don't want to stop for pedestrians. So there's definitely a need for driver and pedestrian education on how to safely use these crosswalks, since drivers are hesitant to stop for pedestrians even with facing a red light. And even when given safety infrastructure, pedestrians don't seem to figure out how to use it safely, creating actually dangerous situations for vehicles. However, it sadly took us having to raise awareness of how dangerous the roads were here in Manatee County through a documentary film that we made exposing how dangerous these crosswalks are in Manatee County for something to happen. We look forward to Manatee County continuing to implement more of these safety features on the roadways, since this area is known as a very dangerous corridor. The volume of pedestrians and how many accidents have happened in these areas is sufficient for the county to have acted long ago. The good thing is that Manatee County is finally taking note of pedestrian accidents, not just along the busy beaches and corridors for tourism, but also where the regular people live. It's sad that it took raising awareness because of a pedestrian death for the county to finally do something about the dangerous roadways. Throughout the state of Florida, many cities, particularly Hillsborough County, have been leading examples of making infrastructures available for pedestrian safety. Particularly, Hillsborough County has been exceptional, particularly in the city of Tampa, of being aware of what areas have high pedestrian volumes, doing studies to see where accidents are happening, creating safety infrastructure in place to ensure that you have safer pedestrian crossings. The new changes along Cortez are welcome. However, along 301 and other key areas, there is still much infrastructure needed to make for safe pedestrian crossings in Manatee County. For our YouTube channel, we've traveled all over the United States, and perhaps nowhere else is pedestrian safety a bigger concern for drivers than here in the Bradenton area. And sadly, it's taken not only many pedestrian deaths, but sadly, just the fact that finally people are starting to expose the situation as a negligence from the county level on handling this matter for anything to take place. I think the saddest part isn't the deaths themselves, but the fact that it took media coverage on the topic for anything to be done about it. Perhaps if this story hadn't been exposed the way it was, without any heat on them, the county would have probably done nothing to litigate this dangerous pedestrian safety issue. And we're going to keep harping on them on this situation, because when it comes to pedestrian safety in Manatee County, too many lives have been lost. And while they're very proficient of creating pedestrian crossings in areas like this, where tourists and other wealthy visitors frequent, the same story can't be said for, well, places like inner city Bradenton, where there are large volumes of pedestrian, but very little interest in making these roadways safer. The city of Bradenton has many state highways running through the city, and when an issue arises of pedestrian safety, it's a city level problem, but it's a state highway, and it takes communication between the city and the state of Florida to effectively enact pedestrian safety. In some categories of safety, for example, homicide rates, Manatee County ranks below the state average. When it comes to pedestrian deaths and other categories of deaths like overdoses, this area seems extraordinarily neglectful. Healthcare is another category where deaths in Manatee County are abnormally high, with most people not aware of how bad healthcare is in this county. There are more deaths under surgical operations in this county than in Miami-Dade, with a larger population. Clearly, when it comes to neglectful behavior, Manatee County has failed the community in providing safety where it is necessary. Many people believe that the only priority the county really has is making sure that they're in bed real good with developers and builders to get kickbacks, neglecting many categories of public safety like pedestrian crossings, ensuring that people that are operating in the field of medicine have the right credentials, that doctors who kill too many people lose their licenses, and many other practices that can only be labeled as neglectful. And the suspicion in this county, again, is that there is a monetary gain from all of these deaths, particularly that the people at the top may be the people getting rid of the bodies. A freaking funeral home. And while this is just what people on social media keep repeating, I don't have the time to verify this. It is the rumor in the community that one of the reasons why Manatee County is so neglectful is because they're making money on the, bodies themselves. When I first moved to Manatee County, it was astonishing to me how neglectful this county was of public safety. And after doing a little bit of research, it turns out that there's actually, interest from the commissioners, mayor, and other people in local government that safety isn't implemented here because they seem to be in bed with the people, making a killing off people getting hurt. And while that does not sound pretty at all, it isn't hard to tell that in Manatee County, Florida, corruption is strife. And again, this is nothing that hasn't already been said. All I'm doing is just reiterating what people on social media are saying on a daily basis. Whether that is true or not, I have no idea, and I don't have time to look into that. But it is obvious, very obvious, that in Manatee County, Florida, there's a lot of negligence when it comes to public safety. The reasons why is not my job to determine. My story is just to bring you the facts. Manatee County has made some changes to address the pedestrian safety concerns, but many other areas need improvements to make the lives of people in this community better, safer, let's say. Many times, the victims are just indigent or homeless individuals, or many times intoxicated, being more a danger to themselves than the drivers on the roads. And perhaps this is why many people feel that despite the fact this county has a reputation for dangerous roadways for pedestrians, that the people who are most likely to get hurt don't seem to be important to the people who could do something about the situation. Predominantly in Bradenton, Florida, we know the sentiment of law enforcement, city councils, and all types of local government officials on their view of homeless people. Every single homeless person that disappears is a plus for them because they're literally waging a war against the homeless. And the homeless are so numerous in this county that I don't know what it would take for that war to be won, as you could say. But regardless, with the vast homeless population in this county, and even though law enforcement pressure on the homeless has been heavy, very little has been done to deter the homeless population. If you're driving through Bradenton, Florida, you see homelessness everywhere. Despite the changes and new laws from the federal government, the state level, and county ordinances targeting homeless people in Florida, what I would call an all-out war on the homeless. As you can see there on the left, homeless people are everywhere. In fact, if you're driving on the main roadways of Bradenton, for every single mile traveled, here's another one on the right, you'll count about 7 homeless or indigent people. What goes to show that despite the efforts of law enforcement in the state of Florida to eradicate the homeless population, it hasn't been very successful. You can arrest homeless people, but they didn't kill anybody, so you gotta let them go, and eventually they end up back on the streets once again. This is the new 44th Street extension, which connects Lakewood Ranch to East Bradenton. It's a massive infrastructure project. You can see the attention to detail when it comes to pedestrian safety here in Lakewood Ranch. Interestingly, most people who are commuting on the sidewalks and bike lanes here are just wealthy people and snobby aristocrats that can afford a crappy apartment in Lakewood Ranch or a gated community. But it's interesting to see the detail to safety in places like Bradenton Beach or Lakewood Ranch, where vast, wide sidewalks and many pedestrian crossings exist. I mean, here in Lakewood Ranch, you'll see pedestrian crossings at roundabouts in the middle of nowhere where there are no pedestrians. And while I guess the biggest failure of Manatee County is how blatantly discriminatory infrastructure projects are when it comes to overlooking areas of real safety concerns confirmed with countless fatalities, yet liberally investing millions of dollars in areas like Lakewood Ranch where there really isn't a need for pedestrians for other than recreational purposes. Here in Lakewood Ranch, there's pedestrian crossings literally in the middle of nowhere with electronic buttons for you to safely cross the roads. Interestingly, the chances of a fatality happening here in Lakewood Ranch is almost impractical because, it's just very sparsely populated. There's plenty of sidewalks. And yet even then, Manatee County spends millions of dollars creating infrastructure for safety in Lakewood Ranch adjacent to gated communities and other affluent areas. Yet in the parts of the county where there are pedestrians and there are fatalities, they don't invest in any infrastructure despite the fact that you have countless fatalities. This is really the way the United States works, where all the resources are funneled into communities like Lakewood Ranch, where I live. So it's nice that this infrastructure exists here in Lakewood Ranch. But shouldn't it also exist for the people in the inner city who are crossing those roads not for recreational purposes but for necessity? Take a close look at how much infrastructure for pedestrian safety exists out here in Lakewood Ranch, where the wealthy people are. Every single crosswalk is denoted. There's bike lanes. They're even highlighted. This is the type of infrastructure you get in suburban wealthy parts of Manatee County. However, in the inner city where there are pedestrians, Manatee County has been very neglectful. One place to start will be to just implement the same level of investment that exists in suburban areas into places in the inner city where fatalities are actually happening. And all Manatee County has to do is look at other cities in Florida, like Tampa, along highways like Waters Avenue, where they've implemented tremendous level of pedestrian safety. These investments in pedestrian safety also encourage people to utilize these commercial districts more, increasing the volume of people that are willing to go to these areas and support the businesses because of the improved pedestrian safety. This is the reality of pedestrian safety in Manatee County. There have been some changes and improvements in areas that are needed, but however, while other areas like 301 are still seriously lacking safety, places like Lakewood Ranch, every single day get new infrastructure added in places where there aren't even people out and about. Just think that the same entity that has failed to create a pedestrian crossing here on 301 is the same entity that is installing crosswalks in Lakewood Ranch in the middle of nowhere. Clearly, who matters in Manatee County has a lot to do with how much money you got and what part of the county you live in. And for those people who have to live here in the inner city, their safety apparently doesn't matter too much to the people sitting behind the desk downtown.